So they're going to go back and forth. I'll ask the questions. I'll leave it up to them to use the mic back and forth. We'll start with the simplest of questions, which is introduce yourselves and your job positions on campus. Sarah.
Hi, my name is Sarah Deitch. I grew up in Queens, New York, and moved to Columbus, Ohio in 1996, when my daughter Rosie, who's sitting right here, was but 1.5 years old. We are at the Ohio State University for 29 years. All my children grew up on campus at Ohio State, 7 children, and our neighbors are all still students. To the right, to the left, across the alley, behind, in front. We live with the students, among the students. My kids grew up that way. We are enigma a little bit, enigmatic, because people from the regular community wonder what is she doing there with her children on a college campus. So we were always looked at a little strangely. We run all kinds of programs. Events, classes, educational trips, different leadership opportunities, leadership roles at Ohio State, Jewish Shabbat, and Jewish programs, parties, and Devorah called Ohio State a party school. I will push back on that a little bit. It was a party school, and compared to Yale, comparatively it might be a party school, but it actually became much more difficult to get into Ohio State in the past few years. And the caliber of status of the Jewish students at OSU has risen. And so yes, there are parties, and yes, it's a Big Ten school, and yes, they very much involve themselves, let's just say, for lack of a better word, in the football culture. It's a good school, and I'm proud to have served the Jewish community there, strong Jewish community, for 29 years.
Hi, I just wanted to say it is so wonderful to be here this morning with everybody. Thank you, Devorah, for inviting Sarah and I to join all of you beautiful ladies for an important conversation. My name is Toby Haft. I'm originally from Seattle, Washington. I married my husband Shmuley, the boy in between the two of these beautiful women. And I actually joined him in New Haven. He had moved to New Haven in the fall of 1996 and founded a private Jewish society on campus at Yale with 5 other grad students, or 5 grad students. He was not a grad student. Shani and Devorah were very much a part of that founding year, actually. I married Shmuley the summer of 1997 in July, and I moved to New Haven right away. So New Haven has been my home for the last 27 plus years. And I'm the director of this organization or institution called Shabtai, which is this society that my husband Shmuley founded with a group of people. And it's a private Jewish club that kind of bridges the gap between different world leaders and the college in different lecture series that we have multiple times a week. And it's great to see Skylar Conrad here, who frequents Shabtai. The name of the organization is Shabtai, and yeah, I think that's all.
Okay, so Toby, we'll start with you. What was the overall climate on campus before October 7th and after October 7th?
So, I guess one would think that there was this enormous shift that happened in the aftermath of October 7th on campus, because surely that's what it looked like. And that was, the media coverage really circulated that. Being on campus for as long as I have been, there had been signs of I don't want to say a decline, but yes, a decline in free discourse, honest, respectful discourse, which one would assume that an Ivy League would be the beacon, and has traditionally been a beacon of discourse, debate clubs. And there was a steep decline, and it happened gradually, but I can give a sense, like, 2015 and even before that, but it became more noted in 2015. So, a decline in free expression is what most people applying to Yale were looking for, and definitely expected when they came, and we're not finding it. So that was already pre-October 7th. Definitely within that there was, a lack of moral compass, a clear vacuum of value systems in place on campus that students could turn to, which it inevitably led to an increasing mental health crisis on campus. So come October 7th, and you have kind of seeds or like fields ripe for kind of like a crisis in a sense, where one would imagine after the catastrophe of October 7th, clearly, visibly, we were all able to follow it, unfortunately, and see what happened. This wasn't just about hearing it, we were seeing it in real time. And right away to see this, to be confronted with an attitude before even Israel went into Gaza, there was, protesting or celebrating the resistance. And I think that was just, as much as it wasn't so shocking to me being on campus for so long and in the role that I play, to see a breakdown of reality for young people, because this had been happening. But to the degree that you saw the vital emotion behind it, and no shame, was astounding to me. And then I could walk it back and see, okay, how did we get here? And sadly, it was easy to see how you can go from moral vacuum, a values vacuum, leading to a mental health crisis, to sort of the herd mentality, sort of forming. Although it did not take over the whole campus. There were a lot of loud, I would say it was a very loud minority, but there was definitely undercurrents that really started to plague the entire campus.
So I would have to largely agree with Toby. I remember in 2001, the second Intifada, I was on campus for that. And I remember a little bit of backlash, well, I wouldn't say backlash, a little bit of opposition from the Arab Muslim Palestinian community with that. There were some protests, and the students then were very enthusiastic and very positive about negating that and about fighting against that. And then, I've seen a lot in the years that I'm at Ohio State, and I've seen a lot of ups and downs, the Jewish students' relationship with their Judaism come and go, and stronger relationships, weaker relationships come and go. And like Toby said, there absolutely was a sense of feeling that students felt like they didn't belong to something. And they needed, and this is across the board, unfortunately, Jewish and non-Jewish students, that they wanted to feel like they belonged to something important. And so I remember very clearly on October 9th, we held a huge rally on the Oval, the main grassy area on campus to mark what had happened on October 7th. So this is October 9th. And we had a few hundred students. It was very, very beautiful. We sang and we spoke, and the Jewish students really came out for that. And there were protests. What were they protesting? How could it be that on October 9th, when the IDF didn't even go into Gaza yet, that people are already protesting? And it really is a sign of a lack of feeling that I belong to something. And so many of these students who are not even necessarily ethnically Arab or Muslim joined this group because, as I'm sure you see in the media, as I'm sure you understand and you see and you read, that there's a feeling of oppressor, aggressor, and then the oppressed. And the students felt like they wanted to be on the side of, we are the oppressed. And so many of them didn't even know what they were protesting. What is this that I'm part of? But I'm part of something. And so that snowballed. You know, for years we've had the BDS vote, boycott, divest, and sanction at Ohio State. And every year it came up, and every year, thank God, it wasn't passed and it wasn't passed. So there was a little bit of that for probably the past 9 or 10 years. And that was pretty. I have seen a sign of mental health issues among the students, and this gave them something to belong to, and it's devastating, and it's sad.
And I would just add one more thing with it, which is exactly what you said, where there was it became very black and white. So you could see it happen, how suddenly there was no nuance anymore. There was no critical thinking. Okay, so that's also part of the lack of discourses. There's no critical thinking because you can't really have critical thinking if you're scared to say what you think. So what do you think? So you have lack of critical thinking, and then it became very lack of nuance. So it was either it's the oppressed and the oppressor. There was no nuance, and this was just to see that kind of as if we could just like that was the takeaway from everything was there's the oppressed and there's the oppressor, and there was no in between, but there was no dialogue. There was no ability to think critically about what you're even saying, and the purpose of what you're even protesting and what you're now saying that you belong to is quite astounding. Yeah.
So the big question is, what is your approach to accommodating the Jewish students on campus in today's climate? Sarah.
Oh boy. Okay, so repeat the question.
What is your approach to accommodating the Jewish students on campus in today's climate?
Okay, so accommodating is a tricky word because I don't want the Chabad House at the Ohio State University to be seen as the place that accommodates the Jewish students, because it means that the Jewish students come and we give them what they want, and we kind of lower ourselves in a certain way to feed them, and I don't mean literally feed them. I mean feed them what they already know. Okay, and so not that I don't meet the students where they are at. I'm very aware of where the average Jewish college student is and where they're coming from and what they're looking for at Ohio State. I've been here for 29 years. I have my finger on the pulse of what these college students want. But there are things that they don't know that they need. And one of those things is a strong Jewish education. Because if they are not educated Jewishly, then when they come to campus and their identity is only their necklace, is only their Am Yisrael Chai or their Star of David, that is not enough. It is not enough. And so really, it's on you parents in this room right now to make sure that before your child goes to college, he or she knows what it means to be a proud Jew. Jewish education, so that when and if they are dialoguing with someone, innocently asking them, what is your stance on the Israel issue? What do you think of what's going on in Gaza? What do you think of the settlements? And they don't know. And so your children have to know. And I'm not just talking about Israel history. I'm not just talking about Israel education. I'm talking about Jewish education. That they are able to say, in Genesis 22, God promised Abraham the land of Israel. They need to be able to say with pride that Israel is the land of the Jewish people. They need to be able to explain to these students who are asking them about this conflict that they need to feel and know with pride that they are on the right side of history. And so when they come to college, if their identity is the necklace, I want to give them more than just their necklace. We invite them to come to classes. We invite them to come to a beautiful Friday night dinner. We invite them to learn. We have them meet different speakers, different personalities who can help them to understand. And I'll tell you, we recently had an event where we hosted 2 IDF soldiers at the Chabad House. And we found out the day before the event that SJP, Students for Justice in Palestine, are planning a huge protest. And oh boy, did they have a huge protest. Right at the lawn of the Chabad House. Screaming, howling, drums, blowhorns. We're in a temporary location now, and so our building is thin as paper. And it was very, very disturbing. But we had over 130 Jewish students in that room who were proud to be there, who were proud to stand on the right side of history with those soldiers while everybody was screaming outside. So when you ask about accommodating the Jewish students, what I feel is the most successful thing that I can do for these students in this climate and in this era is teach them how to be educated, strong, empowered, proud Jews.
Toby a different question. So Sarah, it seems like you're saying that by the time they get to college campus, they may or may not attend either the Shabtai house or the Chabad house, depending on how the women in this room have already pre-educated them. That being said, Toby, my child is at Yale and may or may not wear the Star of David, may or may not show up at your place, may actually end up at a pro-Palestinian rally. Is there a soft inspire? Is there hope for that Jewish child on campus who is maybe leaning in a direction that their parents were hoping or not?
So I'll just add a couple things to what Sarah said, which is Sarah. To what Sarah said, and then I'll answer your question, Deborah, because one of the things that today I think is so important on campus is to give young people, I'm talking all young people, a space where they can come and learn, unfettered by rules of, you know, what you can or can't say, to engage in real, honest, respectful discourse is very, very important. It's what we do 2 to 3 times a week with people from all parts of the equation, from all different political perspectives, and they come and there's
Can you
a...
give some examples?
I'll tell you.
I can give an example.
Oh yeah.
Yes, Skylar, give an example.
I go to Yale.
Wait.
I've had years of. I go to Yale. I'm very close with Toby and Shmuley. I have had peers of mine attend sitting next to me at Shabtai at meals, whom I know have been a part of the protests at Yale. Because if you're a Jewish student there, you kind of have to. You have to know who's involved in like what sort of things. And they've walked away from the dinners just astounded that, because they've been sitting in these echo chambers that tell them that Jewish people are bad. Anyone who's a Zionist is bad. And they come out of these dinners just like dumbfounded. But how could these Zionist Jews be so intellectual and make sense? And I truly do think that it's really like, it changes their perspective, and it makes them think in a way that I don't think there are many other places on campus that do that.
So that's, thank you, Skylar.
Sorry.
No,
That was
I think
perfect.
that's fantastic. It's so wonderful to hear. Of course, that's who you want to hear from. You want to hear from someone like Skylar, who's got her finger on the pulse, and frankly, who was brought up in a home that really is very much committed to Yiddishkeit. and spirituality and to growth, and stands next to be on Rosh Hashanah in Shul and on Yom Kippur in Shul, and is constantly reflecting back to her childhood and her Jewish education that she had via Devorah and Rabbi. And so I think that this is a testament to what I'm talking about. So for those people like Marcy, who have raised their children with a very strong sense of Jewish identity, bravo, bravo, it is an anomaly. Okay, so for those, the trick with an Ivy League school, which is that there's, I mean, it doesn't, you know, your resume starts in preschool, right? You're very much thinking about where your child should go to school, what they should be doing, the extracurriculars, what is going to pad the resume to look at, you know, acceptable to for applications. I mean, right? You know, we once had the head of admissions come for dinner, and you know, 30,000 apply and 20,000 qualify. So what sets, you know, the 2,000 or 3,000 apart they get in, right? It's a lot of resume building and great letters and recommendations. The problem is, for young Jewish people coming to campus, is that their Yiddishkeit and their Jewish education is essential more than that, because they need to feel empowered before they come. So the question is, well, okay, they're on campus, and we didn't do a great job giving them that part of the education. We gave them everything else, so they got into Yale, but they're struggling with their identity, which is the most important part of an education you can give your child, right? And your Jewish identity doesn't leave. You can't shelve it away. It's always going to be a part of who you are. So how do we embrace it in a way that empowers young people when they come to campus? Or even when they're on campus already, and they don't really have a path to navigate, because they really don't have information. I think one of the things moms and dads can do today who are concerned about their children on campus, don't really know what their kids are getting up to on campus, right? It's their first expression of independence, is start to do more at home. So when your kids are calling you, you know, we're going to synagogue, we're having Shabbat dinner tonight. They're not, you know, it's a tricky age, 18 to 21, right? They're really asserting themselves, and they're not necessarily looking for parental advice. So it's how do you give it in a way like soft inspire, is by doing more yourself. And when you do more yourself, you will influence your children in a way that's not projecting fear. You're not telling them, if you don't, what's happening? You have to be solid. You have to be their support system, as you know you always are, especially in this conversation. And so you need to think with yourselves, your spouses, with the rest of your children, how are you going to create your home today, even so that when your child on campus calls you, they've had a rough day, you're not really sure what's going on, right? You're having some form of answer for them, even if it's not what they're used to. They start to think, because let me tell you, young people today are very curious, even if they're not always expressing it. And there's a lot of information swelling around them at all times of day. And so the one place that they need to know that they can always come home for support, for inspiration, for advice, has to be you, always. Whether they learned it before, whether they're experiencing things on campus today. I mean, we're talking about, you know, just the idea that the absolute betrayal that some of these young Jewish students are going through. They've been raised with universal values, Jewish values. They've been raised with a certain kind of understanding about justice, and suddenly their peers are walking away from their struggle after they have stood with everybody for their struggle, and they don't know what to do. It's a huge form of betrayal, and not just for the students, for the professors, for the faculty, for the alumni, for the people who come to speak from all over.
For all the students who went to the BLM rallies, we had huge ones in Columbus a few years ago. Those same students, those same Jewish students I'm talking about, that are standing up for the rights of all the other minorities, like Toby is saying, is now being betrayed because they're seen as the oppressor and the ugly Zionist. So.
And they don't know and they themselves, like Sarah said, they're not educated enough to know about, aside from possibly the modern phenomenon of 1948 Israel. That's not a Torah value. The Torah values started all the way at the beginning. And when you have that foundation of understanding who you are, why you have the land of Israel, what it means to carry something forward, to transmit to the future, I see those students on campus. They come with a very, very different break type, a certain kind of strength. They're not so many. Yale's community, Jewish community is small, but the ones who come educated are empowered. So it's not only that they'll wear their necklace outside their shirt, it's that they were able to stand and invite and have guests and host events after events after event, standing up in front of peers that may or may not agree with them. And I wouldn't know personally, like I didn't know Skylar came with someone who disagreed or who had attended a protest. I don't ask people for their, they don't check in at the door and tell me what their political affiliations are. We're just it's a very welcoming space. Everyone's invited to come so long as you're willing to have engage in a respectful discourse. But when you come and you're empowered, you see the students that are empowered. They're walking around, they're walking through the protest, they're not scared. So do you want your kids to be empowered, or do you want them to be scared? Do your kids need to hear from you that you have confidence in them, that they can navigate different problems on campus, especially post-October 7th? Or are you telling them, like I've heard, put your star inside, don't put up the mezuzah? Who do you want to be? Who do you want your kids to be? And Jewish education is non-negotiable a part of this conversation.
And I have to add something, Toby. You said about if they call you and talk to you about, I'm going to go to a Shabbat, or I'm going to, do a Hanukkah party, or whatever it is that let's say that our Chabad house is hosting. The encouragement and the soft inspire from the parents shouldn't be about fear. So I want to address that the Holocaust is not a reason why our children should be engaged today. The Holocaust is not the reason why our children need to feel proud to be Zionist. That's one answer as to the beauty and the specialty of the creation of the State of Israel. That the Jews had somewhere to go after the Holocaust. That's not the reason. That is not why the State of Israel is ours. And our students at this age, 19, 20, 21, 22, they need to know more about their Judaism than just, we were decimated, 6 million of us were decimated in the Holocaust, and so we need to fight for the land of Israel. It's not enough of a reason.
In fact, I'll just add to that, and then we'll go on. But we had a speaker, her name is Lieber Dugo. I don't know if anyone here has read books like The Ninth House, so she came to speak last week, and she's just written a new book, or her newest book is called The Familiar, regarding her family history in the Inquisition. And she spoke about the Inquisition. It was so fascinating was, we are very focused on, anti-Semitism post the Holocaust, that October 7th was the biggest attack on the Jewish people after the Holocaust. And it was interesting to hear her talking about the Inquisition, which happened, hundreds of years ago, prior to the Holocaust. And she's giving her family history, and she's giving an education to this group of people, the students at the table, about the Inquisition. And she pretty much lays it out what happened, because her family was implicated. She has a family tree that goes all the way back. And after the event, a sophomore came over to me, and she said to me, I was really happy to hear about the Spanish Inquisition, because we've been so focused on the Holocaust. She's like, to go back further. And it's so, we can focus on anti-Semitism, but I think what's really at stake here is ignorance. And I think that we need to fill that void. And I want to say something to all of you beautiful women that are sitting here. We're right now on the cusp of Pesach, of Passover, coming off the heels of Purim, the book of Esther. We read about these powerful, heroic women, from Esther to Miriam. We have been endowed with strength. That's, like, as Devorah said, that surpasses so much, and which is why, as the Akera Sabayas, the woman who is it's not even the homemaker, but it's like the structure, the archetype, the foundation of what it means to have a Jewish home. We are empowered. It is because of the Jewish woman that we left Egypt. Miriam, her mother, all of the women galvanized everybody and said, there's a future here, and we're going to have children, and we're going to march out of here. And so I think this is not, I would say, Sarah and Devorah, this is not for us to sit here and say, we have to do different, there's no critique here on parenting, God forbid, daughters.
So basically, she's saying don't depend on them.
They'll do their part, or tap into the power that you have as Jewish women and really go with that, celebrate that.
Okay, so here's my next question. What have you seen in the response? I'm going to start with Toby now, to start with you, go backward. What have you seen in the response from administration on campus in regards to, for example, indoctrinating professors, the moral failings, the hate rallies and such, in specifically the response from administration? Does that affect you at all? Have you seen a response? What's your take?
So, am I on? Yeah. So, unfortunately, it's lacking. Leadership is really, it was a question of leadership, I think, what we saw after October 7th. And if you have a weak leadership, or if you don't have a strong leadership, things can get out of hand. I will say, I believe every department at Yale was compromised. What I mean by that is that students in every department were feeling, from faculty or just the curriculum, definitely anti-Semitic, soft anti-Semitism. I'm not going to call it anti-Zionism, it's anti-Semitism, across the board. And what I mean by that is either they didn't stand up or there was indoctrination. The Yale Law School has a whole center for human rights. Did they host anything? Not really. Was there anyone talking about women's rights and the failure to women? No. So there was a lot of failure among the administration. They're very, it's a matter of maybe playing it cautious. They were also, there's a new administration now, there's a new president now. If the leadership is lacking what it means to lead a campus and straighten out what needs to be, back into a path of moral clarity, then it's a good institution. I'm not going to say that there wasn't anybody who was able to. It's a big faculty. There's a lot of professors, and a lot of professors did stand up. And definitely they came to our table. I'm not sure they were standing up on campus, but they came to our table and spoke to students there. So our space has been a place where faculty and students can come speak freely about what they think and what they think about the administration, which is great. Also, we're not shy. And if a student emailed us a particular event that happened, which there were many, we forwarded it to the president, to any of the faculty we felt needed to know, and some media, anybody who needed to know what was going on. Because at the end of the day, students need someone, they themselves need to support themselves, but it's hard. It's not easy when you're concerned if your professor might give you a different grade because you speak out. But again, a lot of this is a reflection of prior behavior before October 7th, where if students are scared to speak up, it had nothing to do with October 7th, it was just about different things, so this was it just accelerated the problem and made it worse. The administration has a lot of fixing to do, they do. And I'm hoping under the new leadership, there's a new president, that they will rein it in. It's not a catastrophe. It's not terrible. Your children are fine. They will be fine. The institution will be fine. It's unfortunate that it had to have any form of crisis in the aftermath of something so terrible of October 7th, where we couldn't just say, this is right and this is wrong. You can speak up, you can protest, you can have sit-ins, you cannot threaten and harass students. It's very simple. But there was a gray area, and they didn't come out and do that in the way that they should have.
Very similar to Toby, to Yale, Ohio State. Really, we're a public university, so they get all their funding from the government, and so they always had the answer of it's free speech, unless it actually threatens or harasses a specific student. So there were a lot of sit-ins, there were die-ins, there were teach-ins every in, and the university, the administration did not stop any of it except for the encampments that went on. Those were curtailed, but other than that, the university did not stand up against anything that was going on at Ohio State. I will say that free speech is very important. We do not want to undermine the importance of free speech. We all want to make sure that we have free speech. The issue was, like Toby said, when you don't have moral clarity and this is right and this is wrong, and you are not allowing the students into their classrooms. You are screaming and howling in the library, and none of that was stopped at OSU. And there are students constantly who email me different syllabi that they get from their teachers that they feel, from their professors that they feel are extremely biased, and different altercations with professors about these topics, about whatever it may be in this area. And I will always forward those emails to, we have a good relationship with the president, we have a good relationship with the vice president of student affairs, we have a good relationship with the provost, so we have a good relationship with the administration. Unfortunately, that didn't make any actual movement. I will always forward their emails, but I will always tell a student that bottom line, if you're uncomfortable with something, if you don't like something that your university is doing, it has to be the student who speaks up. I began 2 years ago a Facebook group called Jewish Ohio State Parents. Of parents, we have over 1,200 members in that group, and parents are always talking about what's going on at Ohio State and what can we do and how are they tolerating this and how are they tolerating that. And I sympathize with the parents because it's hard, but I always tell them, your child has to speak up. And yes, it is difficult sometimes because there might be repercussions, because if they don't do it anonymously, perhaps a professor, they will suffer in their grade. But it's a risk that they have to take if they feel that they can. But the students have to speak up, not just the parents. When the president or the vice president or the dean hears from a student, this made me feel uncomfortable, that goes way further than when a parent emails the professor or the vice president.
Wow. I did. I opened a can of worms, and we have 2 more questions, but what I'm gathering right now is, a very big part of our preschool is teaching our kids, even at the ages of 2 and 3 and 4, critical thinking, and giving them the voice to, express themselves how they want, and that's okay, and to be able to have a voice, and their voice to be acknowledged, and then when it's safe and unsafe. So that starts already at 2, 3, 4 years old, where a child begins to have autonomy over who they are. The space is there for them to have the freedom to be themselves. But in our school, in a Jewish school, the line is very, very drawn by not once it becomes unsafe or hurtful. Now, obviously in preschool it's different things like pulling a toy away from another friend, but it's not so small. Because the things we learn when we're little, the respect we learn, the value to stop and hear another friend say what they want, even if the answer is no, to say, okay, 5 more minutes, or I'll come back. Those are things that you learn when you're little. And those are things we need to model in our homes. And it seems to me from what you and Sarah are saying is that college is meant to be that place where critical thinking that you learned as a child can then be expanded into much greater, broader, huge, life-changing decisions. However, it seems that the moral compass, by the time they got to campus, was skewed. And therefore lent to an unsafe space that was perhaps already altered or didn't allow for what playgrounds would allow for in a utopian place.
I just want to add, I want to reiterate what Toby said. It's not a catastrophe.
Right.
It's not a catastrophe. I can't speak for the Ivy Leagues. I can speak for Ohio State. Our students are happy. They're, most of them are proud. The education piece needs a little bit of help, and that's why we're there. But the students don't feel unsafe walking to and from class on an average day. And so we don't want to make anybody panic here that, you can't send your kids to college. You can, just give them roots, roots, so that when you give them wings, when they take their wings and they fly, they have those roots.
And it's not too late.
Okay, we have 2 more questions. Yeah, would you like to ask a question? There might be one on our list. Okay. And then we'll open it, and we have 5 more minutes, and then we will open to more shopping, more raffles, more lunch if you'd like. Yes, and we'll allow for a few more questions. So what I wanted to know from Toby and Sarah were your proudest moment since October 7th and your most difficult moment since October 7th as leaders on college campuses. So Sarah, you start with proudest and most difficult.
Okay, so what comes to mind, really what comes to mind right now is Jesse, AE Pi guy, in a fraternity, October 7th happens, comes to my husband, asks my husband how he feels about hiding his Star of David. Now, I don't want to undermine the importance of their Stars of David or their Am Yisrael Chai necklaces, because it does show a certain amount of Jewish identity when they wear it, and so there is pride in that, and it's very, very beautiful. And he was really struggling with wearing it out, and we encouraged him, and we educated and taught, and he joined our student board, and he became more involved and more engaged. And by the end of that year, right before summer break, there was a big protest, which led into the encampments, but we didn't know that at the time. There was a big protest, and there is Jesse on somebody's shoulders, wrapped in an Israeli flag. And so it wasn't just his Star of David. He was literally wearing it on his sleeve. And so that was definitely one of our proudest moments. And most difficult moments, honestly, I have, even though I've been on campus for 29 years and I've seen the most intellectual, the not so intellectual, all the way in between, the graduate students, the undergrads, the freshmen, the medical students, everywhere in between. I have to say that my saddest moment really is when a student comes for a lunch and learn or for a class that we're teaching. I'm doing a prayer class now, a women's prayer class. I do a lunch and learn. I've taught what we call Sinai Scholars, which is if any of you are familiar with JLI classes, so Sinai Scholars is a course that we offer college students. And I believe that I'm talking about something pretty basic to Jewish history or pretty basic to our Jewish faith. And the student is looking at me like I'm talking Greek. That's my saddest moment. And again, I'm not undermining any parent in this room, but I just can't say enough, or maybe I did say it enough, how important it is to me that, we say they're the next generation of Jewish leaders. It's not the next generation. It is right now. They are making moves. They are getting jobs and internships in places like AJC and APAC and these different organizations that stand with us, and UJC and all of these different organizations, the Louis Brandeis Center. These students are working there. So it's today's generation of Jewish leaders, and I want to see them be able to stand up and talk about Judaism like it's second nature to them.
Okay, so I've had a lot of proud moments since October 7th because our response at Shop Day was to really infuse the lecture series or everything that we did with Jewish pride, and just, anti-Semitism has and will always be there. It's morphs and it changes, but we really focused on the positive and really instilling pride and, again, education and a space where people could really discuss and continue that safe or sacred space to engage in honest discourse. One of the people that we brought, I mean, it's always a busy year, but we brought a Simcha Rothman from Israel, and he was to speak, and it was about post-October 7th. And if you're not familiar with who he was, there was a whole controversy in the summer before October 7th about the judicial overhaul in Israel that he started or laid plans for. When he came to campus, we knew already, somehow word got out, and there was a lot of pushback, mostly from Israeli who are not in support of the judicial overhaul, who frankly blamed Simcha Rothman for October 7th, which, you know, it was from a painful place, but it wasn't true, obviously. But they, you know, they were just, it was from the more, you know, left-wing party of Israel. And so there was, so we had 140 people that were going to come in, and we really expected it to be an honest and great evening, just a great, like one of our regular evenings. And I found out right before that there was going to be a protest outside, and not by pro-Palestinians, but by Israelis who were anti-him. And so we prepared the house. It's a mansion on Orange Street for soundproofing, because we didn't want it to disturb the evening. And sure enough, everybody walked right through the picket line. We had 140 people smashed into the room, their student ties of just how they come. And it was on a Wednesday evening, and there were protesters outside, and they were screaming, and my husband went down into the protesters, into the pack in the front, and invited them to come in, and said, come in, he's here, come in and speak to him. And two of them decided they were going to come in. They collected questions from the rest of the group, and they came in and joined the evening. And what was so amazing about the evening was there was a lot of anger and frustration with some of the students. A lot of people did not know anything about what was going on, but there was Israelis that are on campus that did know. Then, you know, we had these two people, these former protesters who came in, and the evening was so respectful. So exactly how you would imagine a debate club would look like on campus like Yale, right? And even when some student got up and was disrespectful to him, another student got up and pushed back to him respectfully. This is not the place. And it was such an amazing evening to watch this happening on the heels of October 7th. And this is in January, and Israel's in Gaza, and there were so many, this is what protests in general were starting to really in full force on campus. And it was just an amazing night. One student said to me, and she's not Jewish, and she said, wow, it was a real debate. And it was a moment not just about this conversation, it was a moment on campus at Yale where we had been missing debate for so long. And real debate, which is what, authentic debate. You know, when I first came to Yale, the Yale Political Union was like the center of debate. People marched around campus proudly displaying who they stood for, what they stood for, and that has waned to a serious degree. And so for her to stand and say this was like an amazing debate, like I've never seen something like that. It was like, wow, this was a really an amazing moment on many levels that we were able to deliver. One of the hardest, and that was just one of the hardest ones, and I won't mention her name, but it was an editor-in-chief of a Jewish newspaper, and I interviewed her on campus. And without question, I was going to ask her, I led into it. I asked her, after talking about what she's a journalist, and she went to Yale, and she was in Jerusalem as a correspondent, so a woman who knows and is politically engaged and engaged in the Middle East conversation. And I turned to her and I said, so and so, what do you make of the lack of response to what happened to the woman on October 7th? How do you understand the no voice from the women's rights organizations? And she looked at me, and I had this amazing answer. I knew it was almost like we were going to just highlight it for the whole table. And she basically said to me, we need to move on from the rape. We need to talk about what's going on in Gaza.
And I was so shocked. I was so shocked, I could not respond to her. I felt, I could still feel it, as if she had punched me in the gut. And I'm sitting here, and instead of responding like I usually have quick reflexes, I could not say anything. And in fact, my husband across the table, and everybody, if you see everyone's faces, they're like, everybody blanked. They couldn't believe what she said, and the conversation continued, and she was being filmed. And she didn't care. And so Shmuley asked her, my husband saw that I wasn't responding, so he jumped in and asked her the question again, and she just doubled down. And I continued talking as if nothing untoward had happened, and it was one of the biggest regrets that I didn't respond in the way I would respond today, but also it was more than that. It was the depth of despair that here I'm sitting next to a Jewish woman who's talking about social justice and tikkun olam and universal values, and would say that about Jewish women, her own sisters, about any woman that she would say we would need to move on. About any woman. But especially in this context was so shocking and painful, frankly, for me, that I still really think about it.
Wow. Toby and Sarah. We have a few minutes. I know we're over about 10 minutes. We will take a few questions. Marcy, you had a question here.
Hi, I wanted to ask this of both of you. I have a daughter who's heading off to college. I know there are some other moms who have daughters or sons that are heading off to college. In some universities, you're able to choose your roommates, and I know a lot of the Jewish kids are choosing Jewish roommates. At some schools, like Yale and others, you're put into a room with 5 or 6 other kids, and they could be of any background whatsoever. My daughter tells me that Yale, the new president, has taken a position on neutrality, and that seems to be working well because it just sort of keeps the peace with everybody. What would your suggestions be to the kids that are starting school that might be put into, not even just roommate situations, group situations, study group situations with people that have opposing political views? Do you take the road of neutrality or
Empowerment.
I think it's always an opportunity. I think we live in a wonderful country. I think college should be a time of many different experiences, or it can be. It should be, but it can be a time. And I would say this is a time to really assert the things you believe in a respectful way, always respectful, and you would be surprised how people come around. A lot of people, like I said, ignorance is not just about Jewish people, Jewish students having to be ignorant, but a lot of people are ignorant. It's like somebody said, when it was in the 60s and people were protesting in the sit-ins in these same universities against the war, against the draft, against pro-civil rights. It was very personal. This was about America we were talking about. What's going on today, stop. They don't know they don't know. They don't know. They're not being drafted. It's a cause that they want to kind of identify with, but they don't really know. They don't know. And I think this is an opportunity. I would not ever in this country shy away from using an opportunity to engage with people around you, because it's so important. It helps you identify what's important to you when you start to assert that out loud.
It's funny that you asked this question because I just started a service last year for parents to help them their children find Jewish roommates. On that same Facebook group, the parents message me to help them find Jewish roommates. But when a parent texts me and says, Sarah, my child is not with a Jewish roommate, I say, it's okay. Your child can be a light unto the nations. And your child can teach, unless your child has done research on Instagram and Snapchat about this specific roommate, and you know her to be a staunch anti-Semite and a staunch anti-Zionist, and your child is literally afraid, there is nothing wrong with a Jewish student living with a non-Jewish student, and allow your Jewish child to make a beautiful, as we call Kiddush Hashem, a sanctification of God's name, and be a light unto the nations.
Amen.